The next 31 hours or so were spent with the long and arduous process of absorbing the entire ship into exovol's form. But after all was said and done, the process yielded great results, with exovol's form expanding massively, and with the incorporation of all of the new weaponry, armament, technology, and a second Level 3 quantum drive, exovol's ever-expanding arsenal had just gotten a great deal more assorted. With some aid from the engineers, they ended up finding a way to run both of the Level 3 quantum drives in parallel, dividing the engineering segment of the ship, the engine room, into two sections, an upper and lower floor. The first floor, the quantum drive there, was stationed central to the room in the middle of the floor, while the upper level and the quantum drive there was affixed to the ceiling, suspended in the air and accessible via walkways. Exovol's overall form remained the same, only massively increasing in size, with some new weaponry, of course, and a much larger assortment of it. But while the exterior of exovol changed very little aside from the increase in the size and amount of weaponry and armor, the interior changed a great deal. Now, with this ever-expanding amount of space at their disposal, the new crew of the exovol set about making use of it. First and foremost, stationing some new rooms for what they hoped would be new crew members to add to their somewhat sparse crew for the size of exovol. The increased size would need more crew members to ensure that everything was functioning properly, to keep the ship running. But primarily what the crew was most excited about was the other space. Having a massively increased amount of room, the crew had discussed the uses for it with Captain Mika, and together they decided on two primary uses. One large space would be outfitted into a mess hall, complete with a kitchen, where they could enjoy actually cooked meals, as soon as they found a chef, of course, which at the time they were sorely lacking, but they hoped that they might find one once they got to Kothia. Perhaps some of them would decide to crew up with exovol. The second primary use of space that the crew decided on was a recreations room, with multiple ideas thrown about for things that they might implement in the room, such as a swimming pool, training equipment, and sports arena, which the room could shift into depending on who was using it and when, and what for, of course. Those, along with many other suggestions, were currently being implemented. But after the long process of absorbing the enemy vessel had finally reached its fruition, the process of building shuttles that Captain Shima and her crew could make their journey on quickly got underway, only taking a matter of about 12 hours, which was at an astonishing rate of speed. But the crew of exovol was getting used to nanites being at their disposal, so the process went fairly fast, each one capable of Lightspeed 1 travel. After their completion, Captain Shima and her crew boarded the 3 shuttles that were constructed on board the dock, and with Ambassador Ralta, who had spent a great deal of his time in the brig, getting to know Captain Shima again, there on the dock as they left, bidding them a farewell. Despite the condition in which she left, Captain Shima seemed to be somewhat positive about the situation, even having lost her ship. For some reason, she maintained a positive outlook. Perhaps it was the rekindling of an old friendship, but no one can say for sure. But after all of the Rota crew members left on board the shuttles, Exovol made the jump to light speed, heading towards Kothia. Now with 2 dual quantum drives, Exovol's speed had increased a great deal. Now, an average speed of about 19 light speed, and maxing out somewhere around 27. They made haste to Kothia. Exovol's light speed was actually quite staggering, making pace with even the most highly developed ships in the area, comparable to even the fastest ones on the market, which was even more startling given Exovol's overall size. But very few ships can afford to have 2 quantum drives. And with them at their disposal, Exovol made quick time to Kothia, taking only about a week to get there, in which time they had no other interruptions or conflicts. Docking at Kothia's space station and bidding their guests adieu, they stayed there at the Kothia space station for several days, bartering for supplies and letting the crew get some relaxation time off the ship. Many of them actually visiting Kothia's surface, socializing with the people. They even managed to sign some new crew members on. Only a small handful, but everything helps. In the assortment, they managed to gather 2 new security officers, 3 new engineers, to everyone on board Exovol's delight, a chef with many years of experience, and last but not least, 2 Kothian-trained nurses who could assist Dr. Rakalia in the medical bay. But after the time docked there at Kothia, Mika decided not to take on any further jobs from the Kothians, not wanting to get embroiled with their war efforts against the Rota, or appear to be choosing sides. She wanted Exovol to remain freelance. Instead, after leaving the dock and setting off, they set their course for a new world. A world known as Pyrolus. An interesting planet. Specifically, this one was inhabited by 3 separate races who had all decided to co-opt the planet, turning it into a 3-sided merchant world, where the races from 3 separate planets could meet and trade, barter, and negotiate for things, which eventually turned the entire world itself into a merchant world, where countless others come to do business and interact. And surprisingly, one of the things that the world was known best for was its well-established bounty hunt trade. Bounty hunters from all over the sector would travel there in order to pick up new bounties and drop them off, with prison transports and things of that nature coming and going frequently. Miko was actually quite glad that she never gathered enough attention to gain any sort of reputation as a pirate herself. Though her captain might have garnered some minor attention, she remained anonymous, and thus would not be on anyone's bounty list. But even her previous captain was unlikely to have any serious inquiries into finding him. He did dawdle about very unknown segments of space, where few cared to travel, and thus his actions went largely unnoticed, regardless of their brutality, because, quite simply, no one cared about the area. There were no major civilizations or settlements, They simply picked on little no-ones, small groups of settlers and things of that nature, passing trade ships, nothing major. So it was at least good for Mika that her previous employer wasn't out and out famous.